Hi, I'm Eddie Obeng, and this is how I try and share with you every single day a different tool, tip, or technique on how to get stuff done. I'm focused on how to get stuff done, not the what to get done, which is what most consultants talk about, or the why to get things done, which is what all the books are written about and all the pundits talk about. But they never tell you how. You come here for how. And if you want more, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, or you can look for the LinkedIn newsletter, which is called How. Pet of the week, actually. So let's have a look at today. Today's is about making sure that when people have been in an environment and learned something, they can take away the most with them. And also you as a facilitator or coach or leader or CEO can understand what they've learned. Let's jump on Cube, and I'm going to share with you the famous LearnBySharing PET, people engagement tool. So here we are on Cube, where the sun is struggling to shine today, but it is coming through. This is one of my favorite cubicles. Again, it's a huge cubicle. We use this particular cubicle for lots of the work which we did with clients and partners, trying to look at how we might grow Cube. So there's tons of stuff in here, but it's a good place to work. And let's start with this one here. So there is a challenge. When people have been involved in learning, the question you have to ask yourself is, have they learned anything? That's what we traditionally do. So the old world, the whole conversation was about, have they learned anything? And because of that particular thing, we would do things like exams. We would write down questions and they got a chance to show off what they'd learned. It's a dreadful process because you had to decide the questions, and the questions had to be within a bound. So you never found out what other things they'd learned. You were trying to map them to a curriculum which might be relevant or out of date. I mean, it's a terrible way to do stuff. We still do it. There are hundreds of millions of exams going on, even as I speak. But on Cube, in our new world and our new world mindset, we ask slightly different questions. We ask questions like, have people actually learned anything new? And then as a facilitator, guide, CEO, tutor, whatever, you ask yourself questions like, have they learned something that I wasn't actually expecting? And then we ask questions like, well, okay, one of them's learned this, but what can they learn from each other? Maybe they missed something. Maybe there's something they can quickly learn using sort of discovering what other people have done, or even monkey see, monkey do. And then the other question we might ask is, can they actually turn this learning into a better life? Because there's a reason they're doing the learning. It's a return on learning, ROL. Not just the old thing of, well, they've learned it, now they get a certificate. Tick. What do I do with the certificate? I don't know. Maybe you'll get a job. All that stuff. We don't do that stuff on Cube. We don't do that stuff in the new world. So to understand that, we have to understand that we want people to be able to show what they've learned, to know what they've learned. We want to know what they've learned, but we're not going to do it in an old world way. In addition, one of the key things to understand is that this whole area of learning is also this bit about, have they learned anything from each other? I firmly believe that all the geniuses on the planet are second generation learners. So Richard Feynman had a dad who used to insist on teaching him his stuff. This is a famous physicist. And there's a story where his dad points at a blackbird and says, what's that? And Richard Feynman says, it's a blackbird. And he says, okay, well, in Japanese, it's called that, and he names it in Japanese, and in such and such a language. He gives him a half a dozen languages of a blackbird. And he says, so now we know the name of the blackbird, but you don't know anything about the bird. You don't understand it. You don't know what to do with it. So second generation learning is about learning from other people who help you to be able to learn. And that is the basis behind the PET, learn by sharing. When we did the bold diagram on this, we realized that one of the key things was to have 3 different ways people could tell us about their learning experience. The first was to ask them their biggest surprise. Why? Because if you're expanding their horizons, then you'll find that they have some surprises. Oh, I wasn't expecting it to go so quickly. Or I thought what Fred said was interesting. And generally, those will be things which you hadn't thought of. Sometimes they aren't, but generally, that's proof for you that you're expanding their horizons. And then together, you're going to give them a chance to discuss so they have a group favorite. Why? Because by sharing their surprises, they get to understand other people's point of view, and they continue to learn. You get this second generation learning. Then we capture what they learned. So you capture all the different things people learned, and there'll be a group favorite. And depending on the group, it'll either be something which they enjoyed or found interesting or new or whatever. And then the return on learning. How could I use this in the future? So learn by sharing is a way of giving people time in a collaborative environment to first share the top 3 areas and then agree group favorites. And then together you'd spin cast, and maybe one of the team would explain why they selected the group favorites. And if you have a group of, say, 50 people, and you've got them in groups of 5, then very quickly across the 10 groups, you'll be able to get the themes, but they will also be able to learn across groups. So that's what Learn by Sharing is. It turns up at the end of every single learning session. You always start with hopes and fears and end with Learn by Sharing, as opposed to activity sessions where you end up with something called a rapid. And if you're giving people time to go away and plan it, then you give them more time to say, well, what is it we did? Because that's really helpful as an anchor. Help them to understand what they learned, and then get them to think a little bit about how they're going to apply it. Okay, I'm going to use this with my new team members, for example. And then you want them to understand when they're going to do it. This is really important. If they put a date in their diary, they're probably going to do it. And more importantly, what results should I expect? Because if they know what they're going to get, it makes more likely they'll follow through. So that's Learn by Sharing. It's a great way of helping you understand what people have learned, other people understand what they learned, and turn it into action, and also to learn from each other. I've been Eddie Obeng. There's a quick guide, as there always is. And also, don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter.